Online hiring, a commodity market wearing coordination market language. 7 companies, 1 architecture, filtering the consumers instead of the products on the market shelves. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull, founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S. This is go-to-market awareness for the future of HR tech. I do this this comes from my written Substack, which comes out in audio and video format. I'm excited to kind of engage with this topic because I find it fascinating. I like social systems, I think they're interesting to look at. So let's look at this one. 7 companies, 3 decades of filings, 1 question underneath all of it that we never asked directly. What type of economic market is this? My superpower is I don't know which questions I wasn't supposed to ask. So, I get to ask all of them. It's very exciting. This market controls the income of roughly 160 million U.S. workers, and by extension, the food, housing, and healthcare access of everyone who depends on that income. Partners, children, aging parents. In the U.S., nearly 300 million people have a direct stake in how it's designed. It's the farmer's fields. There's really nowhere else to get food, clothing, shelter, or healthcare. It's primarily what a government was set up. It's the utility that controls access to all other utilities. It's important to understand what kind of market we're looking at, Start with the definition because everything after this depends on getting it right, Commodity market is resource allocation. One party has preferences, the other party is a resource allocated to satisfy them. The good has no preferences of its own that need honoring. It's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine way to run a shoe store. A coordination market is a 2-sided matching market where both parties are preference holders. It's like 2 sides of commodities of perishable goods, Talent is a perishable good, because if you can't find work, your ability to be as good at working in your job is going to get worse and worse because then you can't pay your bills and you can't eat, you can't work as well, obviously. And the employment opportunity can really affect your company as well. That's a perishable good as well. So it's these market for perishable goods, right? A 2-sided commodity market for perishable goods. One side is selling employment opportunities, aka livelihood. The other side is selling the ability to work for those employment opportunities, aka labor. Talent and employment opportunities are on the table, both perishable goods. That's a coordination market, 2-sided matching of commodities, The system has to collect and honor both sets of needs, or it isn't one. This isn't a philosophical position. It's the working definition economists use for matching markets. The same distinction behind the Nobel-winning work on medical residency placement and kidney exchange. Getting it wrong doesn't make the market unfair. It makes it the wrong kind of market for the problem it claims to solve. Here's the claim. The talent industry moved the job market online from the newspaper and turned a pre-digital coordination market, a pre-digital 2-sided matching market into a digital commodities market, aka a 1-sided supply chain. They took a 2-sided matching market and turned it into a 1-sided supply chain market with no discipline. I genuinely think we could pretty much say that a 2-sided matching market without discipline is just a 1-sided commodities supply chain, Online hiring built Foot Locker's model and pointed it at the wrong thing. It isn't filtering the shoes on the shelf, the job listings for quality, for accuracy, for whether the role is even real. It's filtering the consumers from the employers supplying the opportunity those consumers came to the market to acquire. It sorts, ranks, scores, and discards people using tools and language borrowed from inventory management while calling the result a match. Genuinely, I think it's pretty straightforward. Job seekers will eventually be the suppliers of the market of labor, but first, they're the consumers. They start out being the consumers in the market, and after they choose one of the job ads, they become the suppliers. But treating them as the suppliers the entire time is how you collapse the market but avoid responsibility. You create one supply chain instead of a 2-consumer market, If you don't have 2 consumers, you don't have a 2-sided market, right? 7 companies, 3 decades of their own filings, litigation records, and sworn testimony, 3 different ways of charging for it, 1 identical architecture every single time. Who this is for. Job seekers who felt filtered rather than found and want the receipts, not the reassurance. Small businesses paying for the noise this architecture produces without ever choosing to build it. Municipalities absorbing what neither of the above can. Legal and economic practitioners who want the pattern laid out company by company in one place, sourced entirely from the public record. The test. While both coordination and commodity markets transact value, they answer 3 basic questions in fundamentally different ways. Put every company in this series through this framework and the pattern demonstrates itself. First, consider what separates a resource from a true participant. An apple has no preferences. There is nothing to track, collect, or display. It is one-sided by fact and rightfully so. You know? Cattle have something closer to preferences. A handler might track their health, temperament, and behavior, but that information is never made visible to other cattle, because cattle don't choose which pen to enter next, tracked but never displayed. Looking hard at those dashboards, all y'all think are really worthwhile. I've never seen good or slow more accurately demonstrated. I feel like Mark Twain's Lies, Dang Lies, and Statistics. The modern version is Lies, Dang Lies, and Data. You know? That is how you manage a resource, not a party. Whose preferences does the system collect? In a coordination market, both sides are collected. The system builds an input channel for the candidate, not just the employer. In a commodity market, only one side matters. The second parties exist simply to be sorted against the first party's criteria, much like a shopper sorting through items on a shelf. Two-sided market. Business people know it. It's a two-consumer market. You have 2 consumers. Only economists think a two-sided market has only one side, only one consumer. And as soon as you think a two-sided market doesn't have 2 consumers, you're building a supply chain, aka collapsing a market. You know, that's what you're doing. Can't get upset that the wheel doesn't run when you didn't make a wheel. You know, wheel doesn't turn if you didn't make the wheel. So that's question number 1. Whose preferences does the system collect? Number 2, what gets measured? The match or the volume? Coordination markets prioritize outcomes. Did the match hold? Did it serve both parties? Commodity markets prioritize throughput. Units processed, seats renewed, and revenue per contact. You won't find which metric a company genuinely tracks in its mission statement. Look at the audited revenue notes, the one section of financial filing where language reflects billing, not marketing. When a company prices engagement over outcomes, its accounting tells the real story. Whose preferences are made visible so the next participant can choose wisely? Question number 3. Herein lies the difference between being tracked and being displayed, the line between livestock and a market participant. A coordination market renders both sides' experiences legible to future participants, like a product review beside a listing. Genuinely, the need to make this market illegible is the demonstration of how they think of the workforce like cattle. Yeah. That's why the workforce does not have stagnating wages, anyone? Yeah. A commodity market keeps candidate records private, not because transparency is hard, but because transparency threatens profit. When transparency threatens profit, you know they're not offering good things. Chefs that make good food aren't terrified of their diners describing it, you know? That's not how it works. A candidate informed by past outcomes might walk away. A blind candidate always applies. Hiding this data isn't a byproduct of the business model. For at least one company here, it was the primary litigation strategy, spent preventing candidates from aggregating their shared reality. Run every company against these 3 questions, and the conclusion never varies. One side's preferences are collected, throughput is priced for outcomes, and the critical records are hidden from those who need them most. We prioritize interactions, not transactions. We hide the legibility of the market, and we don't collect information that we don't want to hear. Goodhart's law is like not getting taught at all anymore or something. This confirms our opening premise. A commodity market hiding behind coordination language is no longer a metaphor under a test. It's a single finding proven 7 times over. But Let's prove it. You shouldn't just believe me because I say things. Let's demonstrate it. Charge per engagement. Indeed, on ZipRecruiter, this is the architecture where the party paying for the service is built simply for engaging with the inventory. How to tell me you're going to profit via interactions? It means you're not profiting via outcomes, you know? Run the test. Question 1, whose preferences does the system collect? Not the candidates. ZipRecruiter's February 2025 investor presentation includes a diagram titled Simple Job Seeker Journey, end quote. It shows the employer rating the candidate rates nothing. This isn't an accidental omission across the SEC filings for the years reviewed. It's an accurate schematic of what was built. They absolutely do not take user experience. So, you know, it's a thing. People are things. What gets measured? The match or the volume? Volume. Both companies track paid employer count, revenue per employer, and employer side time to hire. Neither tracks whether the match held. The clearest evidence in the audited revenue recognition notes, this single section of a regulatory filing where the language is marketing, but the legal definition of what is billed. Indeed, across the years reviewed, fiscal year 2014 through 2025, Indeed's own disclosures describe a click-based fee structure. They charge on interacting with the talent inventory, not successful outcome. In fiscal year 2022, the language briefly widened to accesses or submits an application. The word application appears in one filing and nowhere else across a decade of Indeed's own public record. The underlying transaction never changed. The billable event was always engagement. The word application sat in for filing for one cycle to gesture towards an outcome the platform was never actually pricing. ZipRecruiter, at its IPO, ZipRecruiter's S1 used the phrase clicks on or applies for a job. By its 2025 10K, the note read simply clicks on a job. Same pattern, same underlying truth. The click was always the billable event. Applies to never meant the company was pricing a successful match. It meant that pros briefly implied an outcome, then stopped bothering to. Question 3, whose preferences are visibly displayed so the next participant can choose with information? Nobody's. Indeed's risk factor lists 23 categories of material risk to its business. Fraudulent listings that harm job seekers who click on them are not among those categories. Despite Indeed telling reporters it removes, quote, tens of millions of listings a month that don't meet its quality guidelines, there is no candidate-facing log to check before handing over personal data. What happened to the last applicant stays invisible to the next one every time. Just like, there could be no clearer scenario here. 0 for 3. Yet both companies routinely describe themselves in coordination market terms. Indeed's mission statement has remained unchanged across a decade of filing. Help people get jobs, end quote. While ZipRecruiter's 10K calls itself, quote, a two-sided marketplace for work, end quote, that operates like a, quote, matchmaker. Job seekers are not the consumer here. They are not a stakeholder in a market that requires their presence but erases its memory of their experiences. The job listings manufactured by employers are not inventory. The advertisements on display in the marketplace that attract the other side of the market to the marketplace aren't inventory. What are advertisements if not advertising the employment opportunity? If that's not the inventory to be vetted, like, how to tell me that you're not running a two-sided market while blaming the people you failed to run the two-sided market for not running a two-sided market, for the outcomes the two-sided market you didn't create will deliver. Like, the job listings manufactured by employers are not inventory being quality checked for accuracy or fairness of workforce. The market's consumer is the inventory. In a good faith market, you inspect the product on the shelf the payer supplies in order to efficiently facilitate the hiring outcomes they supplied the role to achieve. Here, the filters were never designed to verify whether a job was real. They were built to check whether the consumer, the supplier, came to the market to meet a keyword, matched a keyword, a tier, or a score. The shopper is interrogated. The goods on the shelf are left unvetted. The online hiring market is very much Foot Locker, where they never were required to check whether the shoes they were displaying actually existed, only whether or not the shoppers were entitled to look at them. You know? Like, of course they failed. Of course they did. It's obviously the vendors. Very much so, and everybody that didn't look at it. who had a responsibility to. I should not have to learn economics and read through SEC filings to do the job that the Department of Labor, Upjohn, Brookings, and all of those people were hired and paid to do this entire time. When we talk about the people who don't want to work anymore, like the reason that somebody who isn't have a training in economics is doing this is because the people who didn't want to work anymore are the ones who are in charge. Filtered inventory, charged per conversion, Kelly Services and Robert Half. Same core architecture, different register on the invoice. Instead of charging per engagement or click, these companies charge when a unit converts, a placement is made, a body billing hours. Run the test again. Whose preferences does the system collect? According to their own product descriptions, not the candidates. Exhaustive employer support infrastructure dominates both companies' filings. Dedicated account managers, guaranteed periods, replacement clauses. Candidate-facing infrastructure, by contrast, is distilled into a single static sentence, unchanged across decades. Question 2, what gets measured, the match or the volume? Volume. Both companies track renewal rates, total placement volume, and revenue per placement. Neither tracks candidate retention beyond the employer's guaranteed window, nor whether candidates' experience of the process was anything other than complete silence. I give them credit for tracking some level of the placement, but I won't deny that they primarily track the volume. You know, like that's what their product descriptions in their SEC filings say. So, whose preferences are visibly displayed so the next candidate can choose with information? Nobody's. Robert Half's own filings document a formal guaranteed period and replacement clause for employers if a placement fails. No equivalent recourse exists for candidates whose time was wasted. No public record, no visible track record, no data the next applicant can consult before entering the same black box. Platforms profit on engagement, not solutions. How is it not obvious? That's what it is, you know? That's what it is. Of course they lie. It was way more profitable to lie. They didn't have to fix anything. They didn't have to improve anything. They didn't have to do anything. Profit in the pain isn't really like profit in the malice. It's profit in the ease, you know? The verdict, 0 for 3 on both ends. 2 styles, 1 mechanism. Robert Half runs this architecture with almost no narrative dressing. Its own account executives explicitly use the word inventory to describe the job seekers, not an inference, but a matter of legal record confirmed in the appellate opinion, Pellegrino versus Robert Half. Revenue is recognized only upon offer acceptance, a model that creates transactional alignment around a placement while maintaining a model that would reward profitably comfortable inefficiency on everything upstream, including the uncompensated interview time that ultimately fueled a 14-year class action lawsuit. Kelly Services runs this identical mechanism with corporate wrapping turned all the way up. An industry that connects people with work in ways that enrich their lives, aligned, filed with the SEC, elevated to a core strategic pillar, and repeated across 4 CEOs for nearly a decade without a single attached metric. During that same period, internal programs were designed to track, quote, what talent is doing, end quote. The language of supply and demand, redeployment and supply chain logistics. Kelly's candidate-facing technology investments appear in its filings under risk factors, framed strictly as operational liability if software fails, never in the business section as a service delivered to a human being. What is a 2-stakeholder market? My goodness, the fact that the business people know how to run one, but the economists don't, is telling that they weren't trying to run a market. They were trying to not have to and not be responsible for the bad outcomes that result from it. The contrast between these 2 companies exposes the underlying truth. Same commodity engine, same failed test, same treatment of people as things, inventory. Robert Half proves by running the model largely undressed that coordination language was never structurally necessary to monetize the pipeline. Kelly simply chose to wear the mask anyway. Filtering the inventory. Talea Workday success factors. Run the test here, and 2 of the 3 questions do not even get the chance to fail on their own terms. There is no transaction for them to attach to. There is no pricing model on the candidate side to weigh against outcomes. No candidate-facing product being sold to make visible or invisible to the public. But the first question turns these 3 companies into the clearest evidence in the entire series. Question 1. Whose preferences does the system collect? Exclusively the employers. The evidence requires no inference. It lives directly in the public record. Workday, in court discovery, Workday admitted its candidate skills match tool automatically scores applicants on a 5-tier scale: strong, good, fair, low, pending, or unable to score. Workday's own filings state that 1.1 billion applications were processed through this mechanism during the period at issue. This is not a missing feature. It is a machine built and deployed at scale with zero input channel for the party being scored. Across 14 years of 10Ks, Workday financial management is described down to the level of individual accounting modules, while Workday's recruiting feature receives a single static sentence, unchanged the entire time. Success Factors, in a 2009 recorded earnings call, the CEO explicitly described the recruiting product his company was actively selling as, quote, "It has never been right in our opinion," end quote. Not a single Wall Street analyst on the call, neither Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, or Deutsche Bank asked a single follow-up question. Not one. Talayo's 2004 S1 documents a 24/7 multilingual employer support and dedicated account managers. The candidate side receives a single phrase, quote, "intuitive interface." That was the sum total of candidate-facing infrastructure described across every regulatory filing through the company's $1.9 billion acquisition by Oracle in 2012. The Verdict applicant tracking system, by market design, operates as an exclusivity vendor. They weren't selling employment ever. They were announcing the decoupling of the market from the beginning. This is a market of perishable goods. Exclusivity is just inefficiency rebranded with better PR. They were selling inefficiency in a market of perishable goods the entire economy relied on, and employers bought it on purpose while calling themselves this. Excuse me. Dog in the background. They bought it on purpose. Exclusivity without notification, evaluation, or recourse does not exist in a coordination market. Ever. Not occasionally, not as an edge case. Ever. I think they were selling hiring employed as an exclusive commodity with the language of hiring as a market solution. Employed, they're protecting an identity. They're selling the commodity of a sacred identity with the language of hiring utility. Because you don't use exclusivity in a coordination market. It's like the exact opposite. It's like saying, I want the light on, so I turn off the lights. Why would you do that if you wanted it? You're not actually buying that. You're buying the importance of it. It's like what I said before. Social capital is used to justify a coordination failure. The evaluation of social capital to get away with a coordination failure, profiting on a coordination failure. Let's keep going, The clergy problem. A two-sided coordination market without candidate-facing user experience isn't an imperfect coordination market. It isn't a coordination market at all. Period. It's not a design flaw. It's proof the claim was never true. They knew it the entire time. A two-sided matching market without user experience, without preferences collected for the other consumer, was never a matching market. And the entire time, they've been blaming the people they economically strip-mined, It's like trillions of dollars. You can check my data from the past, wasted in this market design. It's the problem isn't that people cause harm, is they can't take accountability, they can't change, they can't move, and they'd rather burn the economy to the ground rather than shift this market design. It's like, I'm embarrassed for the leadership. The lack of ability to self-reflect is yikes, yikes. An open book test. There's literally no evidence that it was doing good or bringing value. It didn't exist. Every definition of what the market design is talked about the problem it was facing. Academics across decade, I went through it in my Beyond Skills match, couldn't ask a basic question. It was wild. They couldn't ask cui bono. They literally could not mention how profitable it was to keep the U.S. workforce unemployed to these talent industry companies because they weren't ever required to solve hiring. They were entitled to profit via just insulting the workforce, you know? That's their profit stream, insulting the workforce, not hiring solutions. Like, it's wild. A clergy problem, a two-sided coordination market without candidate-facing UX is not an imperfect coordination market. It is not an imperfect two-sided matching market. It isn't a two-sided matching market at all. It doesn't exist. It's not a design flaw. It's proof the claim was never true. It wasn't buried across 7 companies across all the years studied. The absence sits in plain sight. No discovery process was required to find it. Anyone doing the job of due diligence needed to open the product at all. That's all they needed to do. And not a single person did it. It never happened. The lawsuits that will, it's wild. The pattern didn't go unwitnessed. It went unquestioned by exactly the people whose job was to question it. The civic and institutional and academic betrayal here is off the charts. Southside analysts from the largest financial institutions in the world sat on a SuccessFactors earnings calls and asked detailed questions about renewal rates, margins, and deal sizes, and never once asked whether the product that had never been right was still being sold. Kelly filed Noble Purpose 9 times without a single filing reviewer, analyst, or reporter asking for the metric that would make it verifiable. Workday disclosed 1.1 billion rejected applications to federal court, not an admission, but as an argument that the class was too large to certify. The court certified it anyway. Employers kept buying the product either way. Gosh, do they not know what a two-sided market is? You're responsible. It's your market that you unilaterally control because you stripped governance from the workforce, and you won't take control of it because you stripped governance so you could strip responsibility, you know? Like, Robert Half's own account executives called job market stakeholders inventory, confirmed in a published appellate court finding. While using that word, the company was fighting for 11 years to keep those same stakeholders, job candidates, from ever assembling into a class. Consumer needs were a narrative to silence, not a coordination problem to address. Employers heard all of it, the word, the suit, how unpleasantly inefficient the underlying experience was that they were paying to facilitate, they had created, they had invested in, and they kept buying anyway. The breathtaking lack of business competence here is off the charts. Talayo's entire candidate-facing description across every filing from 2004 to its $1.9 billion acquisition by Oracle was one sentence, intuitive interface, end quote. That was the full public record on the candidate side of the product Oracle chose to buy. Across the years reviewed, 2021 through 2025, ZipRecruiter's audited revenue recognition note measures engagement exclusively and names the outcome exactly once. In 2021, it said clicks on or applies to a job. By 2025, the note read clicks on a job. Application mentioned once, gone by the next filing reviewed. Indeed's own disclosure numbers in their own fiscal year 2023 report, hires per minute, monthly visitors, do the arithmetic to a 0.3% conversion rate, sitting in plain sight, audited year after year. No analyst ever ran the division out loud. This is why I think they were proud of it, because it demonstrated that they were doing a great job of selling employment as a commodity to be protected, not hiring connectivity. They were selling the nightclub model. The market failure of their design was remarketed as the actual value proposition. My inability to respect the market, like my decision to decouple the market, is the thing I'm selling to you. Like, that's what I'm selling to you, the decoupling of the market. And employers bought it. And economists approved it. And journalists saw what was happening. And they were like, gosh, why is this market design not working? It must be the workforce. Like, and academics did the same thing, because they didn't sell them hiring utility. They sold them hiring exclusivity, the exclusivity of the importance of them. The owner of a nightclub views the unwashed masses as the signal of their importance, not a signal of the fact that people can't get in the door. like a signal of their importance. ATS vendors sold them the unemployment of the workforce because it demonstrated how important they were. Hiring as an important identity. They can't tell the difference. Mathematical framework, I say this another way, mathematical frameworks protected by circular reasoning are still Bibles. They're still Bibles, like back in the 1500s, we also had a bunch of really holy people and a bunch of economic clergy, spiritual clergy that wrote their totalizing frameworks in a language that the regular people couldn't understand, so they couldn't really question, people did that before too. Nobody in these rooms needed to lie. They needed to trust the framework enough to stop asking what it couldn't see. They open book test. A framework that can't distinguish a coordination market from a commodity exchange run by the people who were supposed to be the most rigorous check the economy has isn't catching an edge case. It's telling you the shape of the totalizing life system we're looking at. I mean, it's not the afterlife this economic Catholicism creates, it's the present life. So instead of, doing more with less because, you're going to have heaven in the future, it's you need to do more now because if you don't have heaven right now, it's because you haven't worked hard enough, It's still extraction. I'm going to say it again in a better way here, but mathematical frameworks protected by circular reasoning are still Bibles. Nobody in these rooms needed to lie. They needed to trust the framework enough to stop asking what it could see. A framework that cannot distinguish a coordination market from a commodity exchange run by people who are supposed to be the most rigorous check the economy has isn't catching an edge case. It's telling you the shape of the totalizing life system we're currently looking at. Power demonstrates power only, not holiness or economic wisdom. The inability to question power doesn't make you a good businessman. It makes you economic clergy, I put a bunch of check the research, including some basic market structure with Akerlof, Nash, Roche and Tirole, and a couple I added a new ones to this. Galen Shapley, I think they're great. And Alvin Roth and Sotomayor, he's also very good at things. I like game theory. I think it's awesome. System design and user infrastructure, Nielsen, ACM Code of Ethics, case records for Gentry versus Robert Half, Pellegrino versus Robert Half, and Wellbelieve versus Workday. All of those are ridiculous. So patriarchy re-envisioned. I swear to God, economics is just human relationships with money put on top of it, with financial money put on top of it to me. So the labor market is a commodity market, a market for humans as things being marketed as a coordination market, relational, two-sided matching. And patriarchy is the same thing. They market it as, it's relationship, find love, find connection, but it's actually just how to have a human as a thing to do work for you. That's why dudes in hospitals divorce their wives for having cancer all the time because she's a resource that won't deliver anymore. For me, patriarchy is also a similar thing. It's a coordination market language with commodity market, actual functionality because women, you can't trust them. You can't listen to them. You can't hear them, same kind of nonsense. Just people are just people, we're all beautifully imperfect creations. Anyway, my sociological side comes out, but I find economically outside of my politics, everybody has, but I find the dating market and the job market fascinating because they're engaging very similarly. Another way to say it would be red pilling. Talent vendors red pill Andrew Tated employers, and they are, it's the same enshittification thing, the profit via failing model, being sold as that's the whole thing, It engages differently. I haven't studied enough though to say enough about that one. I'm careful about what I can't say for sure. It just really looks from the outside like that shape, but I'd want to see it closer to know for sure. I've been through their SEC filings, basically. The job applicant perspective. Every company above runs the same architecture, filters the consumer, not the products on the shelf. Commodity market, wearing coordination market language, makes the workforce into Schrodinger's stakeholder. Very much so. Like Andrew Tate isn't selling human connection. He's selling male importance, using women as the prop to sell how important they are. He markets his failure as why he's so good at. It's wild to me. Like his actual inability to make connections for men is what he marks as evidence of how worthless women are. Like, that's pretty good. It's quite a good scam. But it makes the workforce into a shorter stakeholder, a purse to justify coming in the store. Not enough of a stakeholder to be owed a UX that serves them. The market wasn't built to meet their needs, but fully enough of a stakeholder to be blamed when the market fails, as if efficiently meeting their needs had been what the market was openly opting itself out of doing all along. They're not enough of a stakeholder to be owed a user experience. The market's not built for them. It's built for employers, right? But they are enough of a stakeholder to be blamed when the market fails, as if officially meeting their needs had been what the market wasn't opting itself out of doing all along. The market markets exclusivity, aka it sells inefficiency as the marketing point. In a market of perishable goods, it sells inefficiency and then blames the inefficiency that it openly said it was going to deliver on the people that it caused you to be unable to meet because of the inefficiency that it openly claimed to deliver. Exclusivity is not. Exclusivity is announcing the market failure. That's what it is. The circular reasoning is breathtaking. It's breathtakingly straightforward. A coordination market without user experience for the side it has already decided to devalue makes terrible economic outcomes and magnificent social narrative reinforcement. Every company in this series got to say that the workforce was whichever one served the sentence it was writing, inventory in the accounting policy, stakeholder in the mission statement, and never once had to collapse the two into one because no one with power who was hired to protect the citizenry, hired to do that, hired to investigate things, ever made them ask, ever asked at all, ever made them answer. And when a job market with no consumer memory is a labor market with no functional minimum wage, those results become profitably coded into market norm and profitably not noticed. One of the most impressive examples of class warfare to my mind, economic extraction and oil rig. As Upton Sinclair once said, it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. At the job applicant perspective, we start from the collapse, not two sides of a market to be protected from each other, two sides of a market to be connected to each other. We drive our engagement not via desperation, again, but via community members working together to address the glaring need. How do we make lemonade out of a market profitably drowning in lemons? How do we create governance in a world where the public policy is at scale, functional economic clergy for unaccountable C-suite popes? Genuinely. It's not like the popes were any more good people than the businessmen with this much power. Yeah, he's the pope because he's the most holy. Yeah, he's the most holy because he's the pope. He has the most power because he's the pope, because he's the most holy. What, you don't believe in God? He has the most money because he works the hardest. What, you don't believe in hard work? Yeah, sure. That's why. We take scarcity of better options, utilize the tools we have in the constraints we are gifted to build something entirely new. Necessity. Scarcity meets constraints is a bountiful economic mother. Conclusion, run the test 7 times and get the same set result 7 times. No coordination market anywhere in this series. Not one. It doesn't exist. 3 billing mechanisms per contact, per conversion, and not billed to the candidate at all. Sitting on top of one identical architecture, confirmed independently, company by company in the filings. None of these businesses could have anticipated being read together. I'd be fascinated to know if anybody's actually gone through these filings and has any capacity to prove me wrong. It's identity. They're all trapped in an identity cage. But I don't know. I'd be interested to see if anyone can prove me wrong. I don't think there is a one that exists. I think the newspaper was the last one, but I haven't been through all of them, so I can't say that for sure. I can say only what I know from the information I have in front of me. Robert Half shows you the architecture with nothing on top of it. Kelly shows you the same architecture fully dressed. Between those 2 data points, it's the entire industry's actual choice. The coordination language was never required by the mechanism underneath it. It was added or it wasn't, and either way, the commodities, the things, got sorted and filtered the same, An economic grocery store that profits via hiding the food, and everybody knew it, and they thought the economy would be fine, What's wrong with you? The human commodities, the commodity of 300 million American citizens' ability to eat and grow a life. Civic instability is a natural outcome of risking the well-being of the citizenry so unapologetically. A national economy cannot function like economic Catholicism, and the U.S. government cannot function like the civic arm of an economic religion, performing the ritual of scrutiny without ever risking the finding. The job applicant perspective sits outside of the operational enclosure that has led to the loss of so many brilliant minds to the whims of unquestionable and unholy and wise economic popes. We are excited to help rebuild and repair the decoupling that was so profitable when the market commodified as it moved online. Genuinely, I think I might write another thing about it again, but like, it really functions like, how is the Lindsay Clancy trial not a witch trial? We have, for my mind, C-suite people are like economic popes. They can never be questioned. Wall Street investors can't be questioned in that dynamic. And we got ourselves like some bishops and popes and stuff. And then like, in a way, McCarthyism is kind of like the Inquisition. The Cold War is kind of like the Crusades. And we convert people to capitalism just like we convert them to Christianity, at the point of a gun. Change or else I'll overthrow your country and, replace all your leaders, that sort of thing. And and we have like these Bibles written in language that the normal people can't understand. So you can't really question it. You just don't understand it, this is going to be okay, and then that's the language. And then you got this, like the U.S. Army basically functioning like the secular military for the economic Catholic popes, it's a life system again, because once you buy off enough civic, like public policy people, you get to control people's everyday lives. I don't know if I want to go into that, but in that regard, then the job applicant perspective is kind of a reformation, because I'm saying you don't need knowledge from on high, you get knowledge from the ground, It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor and it's not. It's real too, but yeah. It's just it's decision trying to decide what type of frameworks to kind of engage with this out of, trying to really help people be able to think on this, and also because it's actually very interesting. I think it's such an interesting system. But anyway, I talk too much, and I am happy to stop talking now. So be kind over there, stay sane, and be kind. And the world needs more kind people. The internet turned the world into a snowstorm. We get through it by trusting the people on the road, So.